Good afternoon.
Okay.
My topic this week is a little bit topical, I suppose, with Boris, perhaps. Are there any situations where you as a leader or a manager of a team can and should break rules? Because we all create processes, we create rules, we create ways of working that we try and embed throughout the culture so that everyone, so it's fair, we create systems. But are there times when sometimes you have to bend those rules to try and get something done, or where something's wrong, you're going to try and maybe change a process, and by doing that, you're going to break some rules? Are there situations where actually just make sense to break rules and do something that you haven't previously as a group agreed? Or should you always be, obviously the answer to this is going to be yes, but are there times where you should just constantly be following the rules and setting and leading by example? But I do think there are probably times where you have to sidestep things in order to get stuff done. Or is the world not like that? And actually, when we talk about fairness, it's across the board, and you've just got to go with what you're going with and be as open as you can and say, I have to change this, I'm going to change it. But before that, you might want to try something, and you might inadvertently break rules. I'm not talking about how good Boris is or not here, but it was all connected to what he had done. So yeah, let's take that to the bottom. Rule breaking as leaders, is it necessary? What could go wrong?
Obviously, initial things that can go wrong is that it breaks trust. People stop believing in you, and ends up with no confidence. Those, I guess, are some of the obvious things out the gate. Before we even get to some worse things, which I guess we're going to mention now.
Yeah, I think you can break the system by breaking the rules. That's why I literally called breaking the rules, because you can break them, and once you break them, there might not be any recovery. And I think the justification for breaking them is the same as why they would actually break. Rules are about systems, about order, about uniformity. It's about getting multiple people or things to do the same thing. It's a structure. And if you break that structure, then you can potentially open up chaos. And again, you bring up Boris. It probably is harmless to have a party if no one contracts the virus from there at the time, if nobody does anything within, that puts them at harm, if everybody's, whatever reasons that you might make that okay, and there's no negative consequences. But because it breaks the uniformity and breaks the rules for everybody, then it causes chaos. Same reason why Lewis Hamilton can't go on a 30 road and drive 70, even though that's not very fast for him. But if he does it and everybody else does it, there's going to be a lot of residual deaths that are because there's a lack of rules. So I think what you end up doing is breaking the system, and that can have very negative consequences very quickly.
Yeah, it's also a case of, obviously, you lead by example, you lead from the front, right? You break the rules and people then go back to the default of, oh, there's one rule for them and another rule for us. Obviously, like I was mentioned before, it breaks their trust in you, but also it just says, okay, well, they're not following it, we're not going to follow it, and the whole thing goes to dust. So yeah,
you undermine yourself as well within a company. If you undermine yourself, then it's never going to be just that rule. You undermine your own word, you undermine everything about you potentially, because people might not look at the nuance of the rule you broke and why you felt, oh, it's like doing something in front of children. If you tell a child not to do 10 things and they see you doing the one, well, they might as well not do any of those 10, because your word doesn't mean anything anymore. And so you end up undermining yourself.
But in reality, right, I'm absolutely sure, and without outing anyone, that we've all broken rules.
100%. Sometimes to great effect as well.
Yeah,
sometimes,
so what we talk about there, because sometimes
there's consequences of following the rules as well. If you follow the rules too tough, you can end up seeing an obvious, it's like that moment on the road where the rules say you need to stop, but you know that if you stop, you might cause an accident because maybe the person telling you too much. And so what do? Do you stick to the rules and stop before the traffic light? Or do you use your own common sense and say, I'm going to stop just after it and avoid a collision here? Or if there's a collision coming your way and you're already doing 30, and if you go to 40, you're going to avoid the collision, but no, I'm going to be a stickler and stay at 30 and die. It's like that's obviously an extreme circumstance, but there's that can be extrapolated into many circumstances where you can look doom in the face and do something that's against the rules to save yourself.
Also, you got to bear in mind the context under which the original rules were made. You know, you don't have the information you now have. So there could be, you know, new inputs, new scenarios that come up with that require you to break the rules, as it were, that weren't previously thought of before. And if you just follow them to, well, you can effectively just follow the old rules to failure that don't fit the current scenario or situation that you're in. So
Yeah.
But then I guess it's who can break the rules and when. You have a team,
that's
and
exactly
somebody sees something coming, which if they didn't change it, you go, how could you not adjust? And you've allowed this bad thing to happen. But then if they now take that on and do it all the time and everyone else is doing it, you've lost control of your group and you have no group. And in a business setting, that can be catastrophe.
Unfortunately, I think that's a results-based business. It's literally, it all depends on the results. If it works, then you are justified. And if it doesn't, unfortunately, obviously there's minutiae, there's, you know, small details in it, but if it doesn't work, then unfortunately you were wrong.
There's more than one side to results.
Obviously,
you have other negative consequences. You might, in a competition-based environment, I might break the rules and win, but what's everybody else going to say when I've won because I've broken the rules? And in that competitive environment, you can lose the trust of the entire team if you then go on to reward the person who broke the rules cleverly and won, whereas everyone else obeyed the rules, maybe saw that they could have broken the rules too, but did what they were supposed to, and now that person's getting the employee of the month, and it's like, So how do you deal with that scenario?
Well, it's a bit of a mix of breaking rules and leading by example. We all take shortcuts, for example, as well. Sometimes is that I know that if I've got something to do, I know that I can take a shortcut because I've got the ability to go back and fix it myself. I've got the ownership to go back and fix something myself. Does that make it okay? Am I allowed to do that and other staff aren't allowed to do that?
It's do as I say, not as I do. That again in that parent talk or the adult scenario. But even in the midst of doing as I say and do what I do, you are undermining yourself and building up resentment and distrust. And so I think there has to be a better way of I'm going to break the rules because I'm wise and you're not, and I can see the consequences and you can't. And so there has to be a way of maybe doing it more secretly or doing it in a way that's ultra transparent as to why. And I think you've almost got to pick one of those. Either I do it, nobody knows I've done this, but it gets the results I need, or everybody knows why I'm breaking the rules on this occasion and I'm making myself transparent.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it sounds like, to be honest, that we don't actually feel like breaking the rules is ever an appropriate thing to do at work.
I think the thing that Deola said was important in terms of the second scenario. Obviously, there are going to be times we know in general in life where you do have to break a rule, bend a rule. You do have to, you know, disobey some previously put in stipulations. But if you can have that conversation with people, if you can justify why you're doing it, because obviously you would have a rationale as to why you're doing it. So if you can make that case to someone else and they can see your reasoning as well, which helps you check that you're not just doing this for no reason. So that gives a layer of accountability. But if you can have that discussion with them and they can see your point of view and agree with your point of view, then I think in that case, yeah, then it may well be justified. As long as you're not in a room full of crooks.
Or people who are some people are hypersensitive to the rules, aren't they? And you can lose them forever if they think you've done anything that goes against the rules. And you encounter this in business. There might be things that you, with that foresight, you understand why you're doing it, and you might even understand the spirit of why you're doing it. But you can lose that person who thinks, "But where's our integrity?" And that can be very damaging. And you can lose good members of staff that way, and create conflict in your team when some people are now quietly, or maybe not quietly, resenting what's happening to some part of your staff team. In the, you know, we used to be by the water fountain, but of course now it's in their own private corner of Zoom. So that can create some issues.
Yeah. Okay, well, this wasn't the specific problem I've had or anything, but it's worth a discussion given the situation. But I still think that in our day-to-day jobs, in reality, there are things that we all do that ultimately we are then saying we shouldn't actually do those things. They are bad habits that we've appropriated, and we actually need to prevent those and stop those from happening. Is that fair to say?
I think
Because in
context is
reality,
everything. Context is everything, because I feel like it could be negligent of you to see the crash coming and not adjust, even if it means going outside the rules. It's just, how does that play out? How do you manage that situation? And to be honest, that's a huge part of decision making, isn't it? Because again, rules are made to be uniform, but leadership isn't about uniformity. Leadership is about taking the team where you want it to go. And so if you're looking at a rule system, which is really about creating a rigid structure, I would say most rules, whereas leadership has to be flexible, versatile, responsive, preemptive. Those things aren't very, they don't fit inside that framework of a rigid rules-based system.
This is the reason why leaders end up breaking the rules, because as you said, for a leader, you do have to be malleable, right? And essentially, as the leader, yes, the rules have to be fixed for people, but also ultimately, as the leader, the rules to you are a malleable thing. They have to be a malleable thing, because you have to be able to see a situation and say, okay, actually, we need some new rules about this thing, or we need to change the previous rules that were around that thing, and make it, make a new set of rules. So when you are the person that's constantly doing that, constantly changing the rules, bending the rules, looking to set up new rules to better suit your current situation, I suppose it can get you in a mindset where you kind of just think, well, you know what, the rules don't apply to me. And obviously that's the downside of it. But I do think that, there does need to be a recognition that, look, rules were created for a reason. And for the same reason that they were created, they may need to be changed based on the outside external context. That's it, ultimately.
Indeed. Okay, so I suppose there isn't really a big scenario here, but if we talk about managing rules and managing a system of rules in which a company follows, a radical way of doing that and a more sensible way of doing that.
I think I've got a reasonable one for a change. I think if you understand what rules, whose rules are they? Are they my rules? Are they rules above me? Are they your rules? And so if you give each person a sufficient degree of flexibility around the rules at their station, then they should understand your flexibility around yours. Well, not everybody can have the same rules. So again, to use that home environment, maybe mum and dad are allowed to do this up to such time or talk at a certain volume, but children have a different set of rules in their bedtime, but maybe that's flexible. So if your bedtime's 8 o'clock, you can sometimes get to 8:20, which means that if mum and dad's was 10 o'clock, for example, maybe that goes to 10:30. And there's less resentment for when you've changed rules at your level. So giving every manager, every team leader, every member of staff a good amount of responsibility and autonomy over their own rules, or not too much, then at the right standard, everybody should be happy when you have that same degree of flexibility with yours.
Yeah, fair.
The business world is a results-based business. You break the rules, and if it doesn't work, you're out. If it works, we take it in, we look at what you did, and then we say, you know what, this is the new rule now. Simple.
That is actually ruthless.
Simple.
I don't hate it.
And you know what, actually,
I like it.
You know what, actually, what that does is that gets you to really, really think about that rule before you break that rule. But
Probably.
You know, to make it even more radical, Charlie, if you know when it does work, you sack everyone else who were just following the old rules. This is the new rule now. You're my favorite now. Let's get rid of all those guys who are just a conveyor belt crew.
And we thought Deola was going to be reasonable today. Oh.
Throw that in the bin.
That's great. That's great. Thank you very much.